The saddest thing about it is the way in which everybody now uses the word illegal to describe people arriving here via small boat. It is not illegal to arrive here in a boat and claim asylum. I mean, I suppose they can bring in laws. They're trying to bring in laws that means we could call it illegal, but it would still be in breach of international law. This is something she does, and with a lot of Suella Braverman's interventions in public life, a bit like Nadine Dorries before her, you never quite know, and indeed Jacob Rees-Mogg, you never quite know whether they are being malevolent or ignorant or a sort of curious combination of both, a sort of 48% both. So when she says something is lawful, if it's in breach of international law but somehow can be perceived as not breaching domestic law, what's she actually talking about? Everywhere you turn in the media, they are describing these people as illegal immigrants. And they manage to manipulate the polling accordingly. Because if you ask the British public whether or not refugees coming to this country with a valid case should be deported and destined never to return, then, well, you would get a very different answer to if you described them as illegal migrants. I mean, look, for good or for ill. But these people are not illegal human beings. I mean, there's no such thing as an illegal human being. But until their asylum application fails, they are not actually breaking any international laws. And I don't fully understand how we've managed to go so far down this road. Listen, I'd expect the Daily Mail to do it. I'd expect far-right adjacent members of the Conservative Party to do it. But when the BBC start describing people as illegal migrants, then we've got a massive problem. Another mad element of this entire conversation is that so-called legal migration has gone through the roof. It's over 500,000 up until June 2022. The net migration is over 500,000. So I can't say to you that I don't know what is going on, because I do. I can't say to you I don't understand why corners of coverage that should know better have even gone down this route, because I think I do know. I guess it just becomes almost gaslit. And we've got an idiot's corner here already. Stop being ignorant. It's illegal to arrive in the UK by small boat without documentation. Stop lying to the general public, and stop with the fascism of pushing your social engineering agenda onto the majority of the country who are against it. So those are the people that Suella Braverman is appealing to. Very stupid racists and liars, because, I mean, international law is pretty easy to see. But that's the question to which I'm going to take you now. I mean, how many ordinary, decent people would, if polled about it, want to abandon children, trafficked slaves, and sex workers? Give them absolutely no right of recourse or legal protection. This is what this legislation is destined to do. It does two things. It criminalises everybody who gets here, even if they were working in Afghanistan as a translator for the British Army, even if they've escaped the secret police in Iran, who are killing women for not wearing their headscarf correctly, even if they had got out of appalling situations in East Africa or elsewhere. There is no safe route. I think I'm wondering why more people aren't noticing what's happening, actually, this morning. Or indeed whether my analysis of what's happening is correct. The Daily Mail in the 1930s, talking a lot about words from the 1930s recently, boasted about how hard they were working to resist the arrival in this country of European Jews fleeing Nazi-occupied territory. Right? I'll say that again. The Daily Mail in the 1930s boasted in explicit terms of how hard they were working to keep aliens, as they called them, European Jews, fleeing Nazism out of this country. They boasted about it. And I'd go further than Gary Lineker on this. I wouldn't say that some of the language surrounding this bill is not dissimilar to what the Daily Mail was saying about European Jews in the 1930s. I'd say it was more or less identical. Calling them all illegal, just to start with. Now, you might not like immigration. You might be terrified of foreigners. You might be a massive racist. But you don't get to change the meaning of words. You don't get to decide what international law is. That is decided by governments. And, of course, the European Convention on Human Rights in general and refugees in particular is the brainchild in many ways of Winston Churchill, somebody who you're supposed to almost fetishize in your admiration of. And there are mornings when you sort of sit here and wonder whether it's you that's going mad or the rest of the world. But what's the difference between how Suella Braverman is talking about people coming here in small boats and how the Daily Mail talked about stateless Jews from Germany pouring in from every port of this country, becoming an outrage? Daily Mail, 1938, a year before war was declared. As we were reminded yesterday by the son of a Holocaust survivor, the camps were already open at this point. Jews knew where they would be taken if they were loaded onto those trains. The number of aliens entering this country can be seen by the number of prosecutions in recent months. It is very... Daily Mail, 1938, right? Paper where Sarah Vine and Richard Littlejohn write today about how awful the small boat situation is. The number of aliens entering this country can be seen by the number of prosecutions in recent months. It is very difficult for the alien to escape the increasing vigilance of the police and port authorities. Daily Mail, 1938, still owned by the same family. It is very difficult for the alien to escape the increasing vigilance of the police and port authorities. Even if aliens manage to break through the defences, it is not long before they are caught and, what's the word of the week, children? Deported. It is not long before they are caught and deported. It's exactly the same, isn't it? Lawyer speaking up for some of these aliens said he was instructed that they were making their way to friends in Africa when arrested. I wonder if it was Rwanda. Feeman and Weiss, who was expecting to become a mother in some months, could leave the country if the magistrate would give them an opportunity. The other one, Feeman, he added, had to run away from Berlin. He was a Jew. And he met Weiss, who was born there. Her brother was arrested and shot. These are the aliens they're talking about. A problem to which the Daily Mail has repeatedly pointed. So, what Suella Braverman announced yesterday was a cessation of all safe and legal routes. That's already in place. And they're not going to open them until the boats have been stopped, to use her language. The Ukraine system has been pretty good. Pretty good. The Afghan system less so, the number of people, because the Taliban are in charge in Afghanistan. So, yeah, well, you do the maths. The Hong Kong system in place, Syria, something similar. God knows how many other countries around the world that you cannot now come here. The only way you can come here is in a boat. You are entitled under the Refugee Convention to do so. You are perfectly entitled to arrive via irregular means without documentation and have your application processed. What they are seeking to introduce is a law that would rob you of that right. So you get here in a boat with no documentation and you are not allowed to apply for asylum. You could be a 12-year-old trafficked girl from Iran. Under the legislation that was put before the House of Commons yesterday and voted through with a majority by the Conservative government, you would, when you arrived in this country, as I understand it, and I hope I'm wrong, you'd be locked up prior to deportation to an as yet unspecified destination. I don't know who I want to talk to today, but I kind of want to talk to people who find me quite frustrating when we talk about immigration in general and refugees in particular, but feel utter disgust at what I just described. Because we've reached the point now, we've reached the point of the needle. Braverman at times yesterday looked diabolical behind the dispatch box. She is not just throwing red meat to people, she's throwing human meat to people. She is promising to be so cruel and so vile because she thinks you want it. Now, you might have used phrases like uncontrolled immigration. You might have had your head turned by the scenes from Dover. You might not be aware of the legal figures smashing through the 500,000 barrier in the year to 2022, June 2022. But the idea that, well, you tell me, what is the difference between what Suella Braverman did yesterday and this, okay? The way stateless Jews from Germany are pouring in from every port of this country is becoming an outrage. I intend to enforce the law to the fullest. In these words, Mr. Herbert Metcalfe, the Old Street magistrate, yesterday referred to the number of aliens entering this country through the back door, a problem to which the Daily Mail has repeatedly pointed. What is the difference between what Suella Braverman did in the House of Commons yesterday and what appeared in the Daily Mail in 1938? You tell me, because I can't see any difference at all. This isn't just language that was not dissimilar. This is language that is absolutely identical. I'll read it to you again, okay? So think about what you've heard her say about people in small boats. Invasions. She's probably used the phrase backdoor, taking advantage, all of these things. Billions, she wrote in the Daily Mail last week. There's billions of these people. So, Daily Mail, 1938. Headline, German Jews pouring into this country. The way stateless Jews from Germany are pouring in from every port of this country is becoming an outrage. I intend to enforce the law to the fullest. What's the difference between Suella Braverman and Mr. Herbert Metcalfe, the Old Street magistrate, yesterday referring to the number of aliens entering this country through the, quotes, back door, end quotes, a problem to which the Daily Mail has repeatedly pointed. And nearly 100 years later, to their eternal shame, it still is. Let's try to conduct this conversation without mentioning Gary Lineker. But when he talked about the language being not dissimilar to 1930s Germany, he ignited a brouhaha of frankly ridiculous proportions. I don't think you even need to mention the language that was being used in Germany to properly examine Suella Braverman's so-called illegal migration bill. You can look at the language being used in London, in England, in the United Kingdom, by a newspaper that continues to lead the line against human beings, or aliens, as they prefer to call them, seeking refuge here or pouring into this country, as they prefer to describe it. And I can't quite believe my eyes or my ears. Can you?